guys, what's going on? I'm going to try something a little bit different today. So this is going to be a Sunday episode, and I think I'm going to probably try and answer a bunch of your questions, but I'm also just going to hang out with you for a bit as I make coffee. It's currently Saturday night, and I have just been to my brother-in-law's house. We've been watching the UFC, so yeah, sue me. I was enjoying that. It was good fun. And I'm currently making myself a coffee and hanging out with Peaches. I wonder if I can get her close enough. Can you hear Peaches? Hey, you all good? She's all good. She follows me around everywhere. Probably need to change her name to Shadow. She's always behind me. Going crazy. Anyway, alright, so I'm making a quick coffee. Alright, I'm going to grab my mug out. I've got some instant coffee here somewhere. And you guys will have to let me know what you think of this kind of episode. I guess it'll probably be a Pete's 2 cents episode because I will try and aim to answer some of your questions, but I thought I would also just sort of chill out with you whilst I am running around doing a few different errands. What are you up to? You want some food? You've got food. Go eat your food. You got plenty of food. We got chows. You got meat. You got cat food. You got all sorts of stuff. You got water. Go get it, mate. Go, Peaches. Go. So yeah, anyway, it's really funny. I should tell you the story about Peaches. We got her from the pound. I think I probably mentioned her a few times on the podcast, and I've just picked her up. She's in my arms. She doesn't like being picked up, and she doesn't really like sitting on your lap, but she loves hanging around. She loves being close to me and to Kel, my wife in particular. She's a bit nervous about the kids, but anyway, we got her from the pound. It's been a month now. Hey! She's so sassy. She just tried to give me a swipe with her paw once I put her down. So yeah, she's definitely feisty as, especially at night. But it was an interesting process. They do vet you quite a lot, right? They want to know, what's your house like? Have you got anything dangerous for cats? Have you got other pets? Have you got small children? And they want to make sure that you're a really good match for the pet that you're about to get, so that there's a very minimal chance of you ever returning the cat. So we went through that whole process, which was pretty cool. We got to meet her. She had just had a litter of kittens, and so I think she'd had 4 kittens, and there were 3 of them at the house when we went and saw her and got to meet her for the first time. And she's only 2 years old, so she's a relatively young mum. And yeah, it was sort of funny seeing her for the first time. She wasn't really interested in us at all. And she wasn't interested in the kittens as well. She looked like one of those mums that you often see in movies or TV shows who's got like 4 small children, and the mum is just like totally wrecked, tired, spent, exhausted, and just lying on the couch. And yeah, so Peaches was kind of like lying there, just sort of dismayed and kind of like, God damn it, take these guys away from me. I've had enough. So we were more than happy to do that. And so I went through that process and accepted her, got to pick her up. She got desexed, so I always forget. I think it's spayed is the adjective. The verb to spay a cat is to desex a female cat, and neuter, or neuter, N-E-U-T-E-R, I think, is the verb for to desex a male, right? Remove his testicles. So I guess they're 2 different operations that have to take place, right? If you're a female being desexed, I imagine they're tying the fallopian tubes or doing some sort of equivalent, maybe removing the ovaries. Not sure what they would do for a cat. I should have probably Googled this ahead of time. That'd make for some interesting search history on my on my internet. But whereas the males, obviously, they just have to remove the testicles, and they're external to the main torso, right? The internal organs of your body. Anyway, so she got desexed. She had to recover from that, have some medication, and then I think it was the Friday of that week where she'd been desexed on the Monday. We got to pick her up and bring her home, and she lived under the bed for about a week. So she was pretty anxious, scared, new surroundings, very timid, and just didn't really want to move at all. I don't think she ate for like a day or 2, and she didn't go to the toilet for a day or 2. So it was really kind of interesting to see firsthand that just changing the location of where a cat lives can really stress the cat out, right? Quite a bit, because yeah, obviously they're just completely new surroundings. And I thought she would kind of adapt really quickly because I thought, it's pretty obvious we don't have other pets here inside, no dogs, no cats, just small children. So I would imagine she'd be able to smell that there was no sort of other animal around and something that she'd have to be afraid of. But even so, she was still very, very, very nervous and didn't really want to come out and do anything. But over the course of probably would have been about a week, maybe a week and a half, she started relaxing. We locked her up in our room so that she was sort of, she had the ensuite bathroom there. She could go in, she could use the toilet in there, not the human toilet, the kitty litter tray with the kitty litter in it. She had food, she had water, she had everything she needed in there, and she could sort of just get used to that one area, and it could be her headquarters, her home base, the place that she became familiar with first and got comfortable with. So we did that for about a week. And then I pretty much just slowly opened the door. Well, slowly opened the door. I opened the door one day and just allowed her to have the ability to explore if she wanted to. And yeah, probably another few days after that, I would be out here at night working away on the couch in the living room, and I would see her walking around, kind of exploring, sniffing things. She might hear me move or say something, and she'd be back to our bedroom where she felt safe, and then 10 or 20 minutes later she'd be back out again, sort of sniffing the place out and checking it out. But within about 10 days, it was like nothing. It was like that she'd always lived here. So she had sort of made herself at home, and now she's just always around, hanging out, making noises, meowing. She lets the kids pat her, which is really good. The kids are coming up and they're being really gentle, and I think it's one of those really beautiful things where you get to see your kids interacting with an animal and a pet animal, another member of the family, and it's something really beautiful to see them do that in a caring, gentle way. Like, they are concerned with Peaches and is she feeling comfortable? She's not scared. Joey, my daughter, has been really good. She's been going up really slowly and just patting her gently, and if she gets a bit rough, you kind of have to be like, Joey, take it easy. And then she actually listens to you and you're like, oh wow. So I think Peaches is slowly getting used to the two small humans that inhabit this dwelling as well. But the best part about Peaches has been that she has no interest in the plants that I have. So many of you probably don't know, in fact, most of you probably don't know the extent to which I've gotten into rare house plants this year and have quite an extensive collection in the lounge room and elsewhere in the house. They're probably in most of the rooms of the house except for the kids' bedrooms. But yeah, I've got... I probably have about 300 plants in the house. Obviously, of ranging different sizes. Not all of them are huge trees or anything like that. There's a few large plants, but most of them are pretty small investment plants. A lot of them are, rare plants that other people are sort of interested in buying. And so my sort of side hustle is to have these plants grow a little bit in my care, take cuttings from them and sell the cuttings as an income on the side. I do have a YouTube channel and everything, but I'm kind of hesitant to mention it on the podcast. Some of you guys already found it, so I'm kind of pretty impressed with the amount of detective work you can do. But the reason that I haven't really mentioned it is, one, I sort of wanted to see whether or not I could use my knowledge and, I use sort of air quotes, but skill for YouTube to grow the channel without just telling everyone on Aussie English to go check it out. And the second thing is, I don't really want YouTube to get the signal that a lot of people are coming to just see the channel but aren't actually interested in plants and aren't actually sticking around to watch all the videos. So that's why I have kind of been avoiding the topic a little bit. I don't know. And the third thing is, I think most people think people who are into plants are kind of weird. So I try not to bore people with too much plant talk. So I'm just going to take a sip of my coffee before I forget. All right, so that's what Peaches has been up to. That's what I've been up to with the plants. It's been a good sort of slow down to the end of the year. My wife's working almost full time. I think it's 4 days a week at the moment, and in the new year she'll be working 5 days a week full time at her job. So she works at a music school as a receptionist. I still have to sit her down and do an interview with her about the process and what it was like actually getting the job, because I think you guys would really enjoy that, especially coming from the horse's mouth, right? Coming from someone who is also a migrant to this country, who doesn't speak English as a native language. I think it would be a good interview that you would really enjoy. I just have to pin her down, right? I have to get her to the point where she is keen to be able to, relaxed and happy enough to be able to sit down and talk for a significant amount of time, because at the moment it's just quite stressful with the kids, and that's been part of it too. I've sort of, as you may have noticed, I've sort of stepped back a little bit from Aussie English and haven't been doing as much content creation. And a lot of that has just been that it is so hard when you have small children to kind of find enough time, especially when you're the stay-at-home dad and your partner has a full-time job, to really be able to have a decent chunk of time to smash things out. So I've really been trying to sort of grapple with that, get used to that this year, and become accustomed to just being a dad of two very small children who take up a lot of time. Anyway, I've been ranting and raving quite a bit, so I am going to try and find your questions. And I'm going to quickly remove the microphone because I'm going to sneeze. My hay fever at the moment is atrocious. So hay fever is the allergies that you have, seasonal allergies that you get to pollen in the air. And I get that. I used to be allergic to cats. I haven't... Oh, Jesus, Peaches. She just jumped up on the couch and almost knocked my coffee over. I used to get it from cats, but I find that if I've been away from cats and not living with a cat in the house for a significant amount of time, I get the allergies from them. And sorry, I'm sniffing because I have the allergies. But when I'm around them more frequently, they disappear. So, yeah, it is an interesting one. I've been living with Peaches now for about 5 weeks. And so, as a result, the allergies have kind of disappeared. Okay, so let's try and get to some questions. And I'm going to sit down here. Peaches is next to me. I got my coffee as well. Hopefully she chills out. All right, so here we go. Happy Christmas. I have 1,000 grammar questions. Do I pay for the answers? I think just ask a question, mate. There's no... Yeah, I'm not doing private lessons at the moment, but if you have 1,000 grammar questions, just start with one, and I'll do my best in the future to answer it. And it looks like he said, he asked a following question. Okay, what kind of grammar is the present continuous requires a helping V? Okay, so I'm not really sure what you're asking here. Requires a helping V. I think you've been cut off. Okay, so... yeah, you might have to send me a message with that full question. Okay, let's see if I can find one that I can actually answer. What is your overall view of Lebanon? Wow, that's an interesting one. That kind of came out of left field. So the Lebanese people I know are all beautiful, lovely human beings. I've met quite a few. There is a big Lebanese community in Australia. I think particularly in the western suburbs around Melbourne. There's probably one in Sydney as well, but I'm not really familiar with the area as much. But the thing, and again, I'm going to be probably, confused here, but a big thing that kind of freaks me out, I think, about Lebanon is the government. And I can't remember if it's Hamas or Hezbollah. Forgive me for that, guys. But I remember that they are or were run by a very corrupt group of people who ended up causing that huge explosion that killed hundreds of people, and that was a big sort of, I don't know, again, I don't know that much about Lebanon, so I'm probably talking out of my ass and shouldn't really have an opinion on it, but that was one thing that I remember coming up on my radar, and I was just sort of like, wow, that is, atrocious that they mishandled I think they were like, was it like fertilizer or something, like nitrogen fertilizer that they just let pile up and just sat there, and then it caught fire and eventually exploded. But I remember that and just being like, this is atrocious, this is disgusting. For all the Lebanese people that I know that are just absolutely beautiful and amazing, it's just such a shame that they are, currently run by a corrupt government that just doesn't have their best interests at heart. But... yeah, I can't for the life of me remember if it's Hamas. I have a feeling that, and again, you guys who are Islamic are going to be listening to this and being like, God, this guy is such a moron. Let's just look this up now. All right, we'll look up Hamas. and Wikipedia. I have a feeling this is related to... Oh man, and I've got my phone in Portuguese. Yeah, Hamas is related to Palestine, right? It's the movement in Palestine, so it might be Hezbollah. Hezbollah. Let's see if I can look this up correctly. Peaches is just licking herself next to me. I hope you guys don't mind me talking about this sort of stuff. Again, I'm no expert, and I don't mind you guys asking me questions about this sort of stuff and me trying to, off the top of my head, give you answers and trying to be as open and honest about these things as possible because, yeah, the whole point of the podcast isn't for me to create episodes that make me look as smart as possible. The whole point of them is to allow you guys to sort of understand what an Australian is like. Yeah, Hezbollah is a Lebanese Shia Islamist political party and militant group. There you go. Okay, so forgive me for my ignorance, guys. It's Hezbollah that I'm thinking about, not Hamas. Okay. So yeah, I guess that's that sort of ignorant answer to your lovely question. Next question. Could you talk about Aussie traditions which are different in the rest of the world, please? Aussie traditions which are different from the rest of the world. Traditions. See, this is one of these things that's really hard to answer because we have such a mix of cultures and histories here. And at least for me personally, my background is obviously British English, right? I'm Caucasian and my family originates from England, Britain, Scotland, a little bit of Ireland, and maybe I think a little bit of West Germanic blood in there. So a lot of our traditions typically come from British traditions, Scottish traditions, Irish traditions, right? It's all sort of the Protestant, Catholic, religious kind of holiday-related stuff, celebrating Easter and Christmas, and the foods that we kind of eat, the things that we do on those holidays. So it's not really unique to Australia. So I think maybe something that is relatively unique might be like the way that we celebrate Christmas during summer and we do things like cricket on the beach or, we spend a lot of time on the beach during Christmas. So for the rest of the world, especially the Western world that celebrate Christmas, much of that is in the Northern Hemisphere, and so they're celebrating during winter. And so a lot of what they would associate Christmas with is, snow and reindeer and, the cold weather, whereas we in Australia are kind of used to all of that kind of iconography that is related to Christmas, all the snow, the Northern Hemisphere, Santa being at the North Pole and his reindeer and everything like that. But funnily enough, in our heads, we also think Christmas summer, right? So Christmas going to the beach, Christmas going camping, Christmas really hot weather, Christmas, dry or potentially humid, depending on the sort of climate and the cycle and where you are in Australia. So that might be one of them, those sorts of traditions of having the family going camping during Christmas holidays or summer holidays, playing cricket on the beach, getting you would have like a ball, a bat and some stumps and have your family there and you play cricket on the beach. It's a common thing you'll see here. Another one that's sort of come about in my lifetime would be, say, sporting people celebrating wins by doing a shoey. And a shoey is where you pour a beer into your shoe and then drink the beer out of your shoe. And so you will see this quite often with sporting stars who win some kind of event, right? It might be, I've forgotten the name of the guy who drives for Red Bull in the Formula One, but I think I've seen him do a shoey before where he wins a race and he ends up just pulling his shoe off, pouring a beer into it and drinking the beer out of the shoe. And I think a big part of that is drunken Aussie kind of blokey culture and the fact that, one, we love beers, and two, we're kind of dirty, uncouth, and willing to do stuff to impress our mates, especially gross sort of stuff like that when we're drunk or, under the influence of beer. So that's why it sort of became this cultural thing, at least in my generation. I don't think it's something my parents ever would have done in their generation, or my grandparents, God forbid, they would never have done something like that. But definitely that kind of rowdy, young Aussie guy going to a party, wanting to show off to his mates and be that sort of like, life of the party, I'm impressing everyone. Maybe not the women, but maybe the other guys there at the party. It's doing a shoey for a dare there, or it's become this thing of if you're an Aussie bloke and you're involved in sport and you win something, you might do one, especially if it's a sport where you've got champagne or alcohol at the end, right? When you celebrate a win. And you do it to kind of show off your Australianness, right? The fact that you are an Aussie. All right. Someone here has asked, would you choose Melbourne or Sydney for living and why? So I think we sort of answered this in the previous one. Check out Pete's 2 cents. And I think Sydney, there's a Sydney episode that was done a few months ago. I can't remember the exact title, but go and check that out. I think I sort of talk about this. I do have to admit here that I am biased. I obviously grew up and lived around Melbourne. So I was born in Melbourne. I was there until I was 9. Then we moved down the coast here to Ocean Grove. I lived there until I was 18. And then I moved back to Melbourne, where I lived for another 11 years while I was studying at university. And then after that, I moved to Canberra for about 6 months, 8 months. And then we moved back to my hometown and then to Curlewis, where I currently am, which is only about 10 minutes from my hometown. So I've always been around this area. I have travelled to Sydney a few times, and I have spoken about Sydney a lot. I have met a lot of people from Sydney. So I do have a rough idea of what it's like, but I can't say that I've lived there for the equivalent amount of time that I've lived in Melbourne. And so, and I'm obviously biased because I have lived in Melbourne and it's sort of like my hometown, sort of, these are my people, and Sydney are the sort of the outsiders, the others. So I would like to say Melbourne's better. Both are pretty expensive places to live. I would imagine that Sydney, and I wouldn't imagine, I know that Sydney is more expensive than Melbourne. It's one of, if not the most expensive place to live in Australia. One story that I had that I've mentioned before, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, I don't know how long ago, but I think I've mentioned it on the podcast. I had a friend who got a job in Sydney working for Google, and I remember him telling me, he'd been paying in Melbourne something like $700 a week for his own house, which, is probably the normal sort of pricing there if you're close to the city. You guys have to tell me if I'm wrong. I haven't ever rented an entire house by myself in Melbourne, but that sounds about right. So anyway, he was renting a house for about that with his girlfriend, and then they were like, okay, I guess we'll add a few $100 and be living in an equivalent house in Sydney. They went to Sydney and they ended up getting a place, but it turns out they have like this crack den, like rundown 2-bedroom apartment that has mold on the walls and no air conditioning and everything, and it's $1,100 a week. So they're paying something like $4,500 a month for this, and he was just like, I can't believe I work at Google and this is where I have to live. So I think that's one of those sort of stereotypical views of Sydney. It's like beautiful landscape. The people are nice. The people are just like most other Australians from other parts of Australia, but it's hella expensive, right? It's very, very, very expensive for what it is. There are beautiful beaches, but they're going to be so full of other people, full of tourists. I hear that it is very cramped there, and the city is very disorganized in its makeup, the way that it was formed. It was very haphazard when it was put together because it was obviously the place where the Europeans colonized Australia. It was kind of formed as it expanded, and so streets go random directions. It's not like a grid pattern that you find in Melbourne, which is sort of much easier to navigate. It does have beaches that are beautiful and mountains that are really beautiful that are very close to it. Melbourne has beaches, but they're on the interior of a bay, Port Phillip Bay, and so they're not as nice. They don't have surf. You definitely can go there, and they're sort of similar. You will see a lot of tourists and a lot of people sort of flood these places during summer. But yeah, I don't know. I think I wouldn't live in either place anymore, to be honest. I would live outside of it, where I am living currently, right? I'm about an hour and a half away from Melbourne. If I were to drive, I'm half an hour away from Geelong, and I'm in just sort of a suburbia that's near the beach. And so if I was to live somewhere near Sydney, I would probably find a similar kind of arrangement. I'd go up the Central Coast, or maybe I would go down south towards Wollongong to these smaller towns compared to Sydney, and try and live somewhere like that that's more affordable, quieter, but still beautiful, has beaches, has forests. That's the kind of stuff that I'm really, attached to. I think it would be very hard for me to live a long way from the beach, full stop. That's probably the most important thing, water. I have a very deep affection for the ocean, and surf. And I grew up there. I used to go to the beach all the time with my parents. They were both zoologists, marine biologists who looked at, they were doing their postgraduate studies looking at shellfish on the beach, both of them doing different projects. And so I grew up going down to the beach all the time and having this stuff pointed out to me, fossicking through rocks, finding crabs and fish and octopus and all sorts of stuff. You know, I learned to scuba dive. So I've always loved the beach and can't imagine really living too far away from it. But I also love the forest and would love to be near that. All right, next question. Why does every single time that I try to do an Australian accent, I sound British? Well, there are a few key differences, right? And it'll depend on the British accent that you're sort of pulling out. But you might be using the schwa at the ends of words instead of the vowel sound, right? So versus So for a good example would be saying my name, P-ta, right? And if you were to say this quickly, you won't say the T, you'll say it as a T flap, Peter, Peter. Brits with, you know, a standard received pronunciation kind of, South England accent would pronounce it as Peter, Peter, Peter. They won't do the T flap, Peter, and they won't say they'll say the schwa, Peter. So this is my friend Peter. Peter. Hey, Peter. I can't do a very good British accent. But those are some of the things. Not doing the T flap. So not saying a r instead of a t or a d sound when you've got vowels either side of it and it's at the front of an unstressed syllable. I know that's a lot to sort of take in, but effectively a T and a D, if there are vowels on either side of it and you're not emphasizing the start of the syllable where that T or D is, you're going to say a T flap in Australian English. In British English, you would say the T or the D sound typically. And they also have things like the glottal stop in the place of a T as well. They might say Peter instead of Peter or Peter. Peter. Peter, this is my mate Peter. My mate Peter. And so I'm using the glottal stop there to stop the T in my throat. Peter, Peter, Peter. Instead of saying Peter or using the T flat Peter. Peter, where the tongue is slapping the top of my mouth. Peter, Peter, Peter. So if you miss or mix those kind of up in the way that you speak and you're using like the glottal stop or you're not using the T flap, then it can come off a little bit British at times, okay? But it's not the end of the world, right? We're still going to understand you. So communication over perfection, right? What matters is you being able to use your English and communicate, get your message across and understand what people are saying to you and form those connections with humans, with other people, whether they're native or non-native speakers. And it's not being perfect and, pretending to be a native Australian English speaker. All right, we got another one here. Will you have discounts in your courses for Christmas? So yeah, I'm going to do that. I just have to be more organized and set that up. So I'll set myself a challenge to try and have this out tomorrow. When this episode comes out, I will try and give you a discount code. In fact, you know what? I'll tell you right now, the code will be 25 off, right? 250FF. And you'll get obviously 25% off any of my courses or the podcast membership. The academy will still be closed, but everything else you will get 25% off if you use 25 off as the coupon code at the checkout. Okay, so I've used that in the past for Christmas. I know that's what I normally use. So 250FF. Hopefully that's easy to remember. Put that in for any course, and I will make sure that that works before this episode comes out so that you guys can definitely save 25% off any course that you wish to purchase over the Christmas period. So I might do that for a week starting tomorrow. All right. This one is a good question. Pete, do you love cooking? And are you a foodie person? I definitely am a foodie person. You can probably tell because I put on a bit of weight since I started Aussie English. So I think if you were to go back and listen to me, I probably sound different if you go back and listen to me, but I think I probably weigh about 20 kilos heavier than I did at my thinnest. Yeah, I'm probably like 93 kilos right now. And I think I got down to like, when I was really thin and running 10 kilometers a day, I got down to like 67. So Jesus, that's like what, 26 kilos? I definitely wasn't as muscular as I got later on, but yeah, I definitely love food. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make. I went out today, in fact, I think it was today. It's so hard to remember when you have such long days. It might have been yesterday, but I went out to a restaurant. There's a restaurant in Ocean Grove. If you guys come to Ocean Grove, go to a restaurant called Driftwood. Driftwood, right? So the wood that floats on the ocean, driftwood. And the thing that I always get when I go there is the southern fried chicken wrap. So it is southern fried chicken. I guess it's chicken that's been fried and it has a certain set of spices, herbs and spices that are added to it. And it's just phenomenal. And you're going to have to forgive me. I'm going to have to sneeze again, so hold on a second. All right, I'm going to try and go through and edit that stuff out, but yeah, forgive me for that, guys. I'm just really suffering from allergies today. It's been a lot of good fun. So yeah, I do like cooking. I don't do it enough. I used to do it a lot more when I was single, but I normally at the moment I don't do a lot of like cooking things in the oven. And I used to love baking and cooking lots of, roasts up, chicken, all that sort of stuff, but haven't done that in a while, at least, not frequently. Like, we still do it from time to time, but not like, every day. All right, so this one is, how good would you rate universities in Australia? I think we're up there. We definitely have competitive universities, things like Melbourne University, Monash University, ANU. There are quite a lot of universities around Australia where you can get, top-notch educations in loads of different fields, from science, medicine, business, arts, architecture, all those sort of stuff. So yeah, they're definitely up there, but I think they would still fall behind places like Cambridge and Oxford in Great Britain, and your Harvard and other really, really big universities that are at the top of the what would you say, the top of the list in the US. All right, we've got a good one here. How do I deal with spiders in my house? All right, so the first and most sort of unpopular method, with me at least, is using bug spray. So you definitely can kill them with that. Although what I would say is that if you ever kill a bug with bug spray, try and actually squash it afterwards, because the bug spray usually, from what I understand, doesn't actually kill it but paralyzes it, and it just dies slowly by dehydration and not eating. So if you're going to use bug spray, squash it after you've paralyzed it. So yeah, to be, as humane as possible. The usual go-to, as long as you're not dealing with a very, very, very dangerous spider, like a Sydney funnel-web spider or a redback spider. Those are the two deadly Australian spiders. The Sydney funnel-web spider is obviously close to Sydney. You don't really have to deal with it elsewhere, but if you live in and around Sydney and it's there, then yeah, obviously go for the bug spray or squash it with something else first, or just leave and get someone else to come and do it, right? Contact a spider catcher or something to deal with the spider for you. If it's something that is less dangerous, I would probably just get a piece of paper and encourage it to get on the paper and then take it outside. If you're worried about that and getting, having the thing moving around too much, get a glass, put the glass over the top of the spider and slide a sheet of paper underneath the glass as you lift it up a little bit, only enough for you to slide the paper under and not let the spider out. And if you're worried about the paper being sort of too flimsy, I would probably use some card or cardboard or plastic or a book or something that you can hold flat to the surface of the glass as you take it outside. So I might do one or two more and then finish up, because I can feel my allergies are really coming on and I probably sound horrible, guys. So big, big, big apologies for that. All right, we got one here that is, what is your plan for Christmas Eve? I will probably hang out with my folks, with my family. I guess we'll see what happens, because we'll definitely see them on Christmas Day. So that's the 25th of December. But we used to catch up with my uncle and auntie all the time on Christmas Eve, but we saw them today, actually. We had a party, and today's the 17th, I think. So we'll obviously not see them again, in a handful of days on the 24th as well. So yeah, I think I'll probably just be hanging out with my parents and my sister and her family. So my niece and nephew and my brother-in-law, and be just finding reasons to catch up, whether it's just having a lunch and letting the kids play around, or having dinner or something, or watching a movie. We'll put in the effort to try and hang out together. All right, last question. Where do you want to come to Adelaide? So I'm not sure if this means like where in Adelaide, like do I want to come and visit, or when do I want to come to Adelaide? I've been to Adelaide a few times and I actually really like Adelaide. Again, it's one of these cities that's kind of smaller, the pace is slower, it's just a little quieter than places like Melbourne and Brisbane and Sydney, you know, these bigger cities. So Adelaide's a beautiful place. I would love to go there again soon and visit, see the sights, and probably get a little closer to the interior. So go north a little bit to try and see the sights and get into the mountains there. And, you know, my mum grew up there when she was a young girl. She was there with my grandparents when they were, I think they'd moved there because my grandfather got a job as an engineer. So they were there for, I don't know, a decade or so, I think. I'm not sure. I think it was about that. So yeah, I definitely want to go. When? I don't know. I think it would be, it's not on the immediate list of priorities of places to visit. I think Tasmania is becoming one that we'll probably visit. I've got an interview coming out in the near future with a friend called Rogan, and he was on the podcast talking about growing up in Canberra and how he and his family have decided to move to Tasmania to buy a farm and sort of live off the land down there. So I think we'll be trying to go and visit them at some point once they get settled and have their own place and everything. And they keep inviting us to come down and being like, you know, you can stay for as long as you want. Just come. And I've never been to Tasmania. It's always been a stone's throw away, right? Very close. But just for one reason or another, never got around to it. So I would love to go to Tassie. But yeah, Adelaide, I'm not sure. I would love to go to Perth. And I think if I were to go to Perth, I wouldn't mind doing the drive, although it is a big commitment. It's like 5 days. But yeah, I would end up going through Adelaide if I were to do that. It's just, yeah, traveling with small kids and just having a young family makes it kind of difficult for travel, and it's expensive here, right? So yeah, and I also have to sort of organise my wife going home to Brazil. She hasn't been home for 7 years now, I think. So I think she's pretty keen to do that, and we'll obviously have to save up quite a bit of money for her to be able to afford to go back to Brazil to see her family. And it'll probably mainly just be her because, again, yeah, I really don't like the idea of travelling with 2 very young children on planes for the sake of other people. Anyway, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. I'm sorry if it was a bit of a short one. We've been ranting for about, 40 minutes or so. And forgive me again for my allergies, my sneezing, and also my ignorance when it comes to Lebanon. But yeah, I love you guys. Thank you so much for following Aussie English. Thank you so much for supporting me. I hope you guys have an amazing Christmas period, whether you're celebrating it or not. I just hope you stay safe and sound and get to hang out with your loved ones. And yeah, just don't forget, if you do want any of my courses, you can go to aussieenglish.com.au and there'll be a button in the menu that you can click that's courses, or just scroll down and there will be courses that will be shown on the page. And you can use the coupon code 25OFF to 50FF to save 25% off any of my courses, as well as the premium podcast membership. So yeah, thanks again, guys, and I'll chat to you soon.